I remember that for the wildest theory too. Did you guys hear about this random fan theory? Because I remember when Fury Road came out. You're googling online. It was the Max in Fury Road wasn't actually Mad Max. Did you hear about that theory? And it was
So,
actually the feral kid from the Road Warrior. And it
I
got
didn't hear that
so
theory. I did hear the theory that Mad Max is not actually a real person. He's
yeah, it's the
just
man with no name.
yeah. It's a story that people in the post-apocalyptic world
Yeah,
make up as like it's vengeance brought
yeah,
upon evil kind of thing.
which is amazing.
So apparently I talked too much last week because Chris went and got a guest for this week. So we're talking movies. We're talking Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior, starring Mel Gibson, Bruce Spence, and Virginia Hay. Written by Terry Hayes, Brian Hannett, and George Miller, who also directed. Greetings from the humongous, the Lord humongous, the warrior of the wasteland, the Ayatollah of rock and rolla.
I remember a time of chaos, ruined dreams, this wasted land. But most of all, I remember the road warrior, the man we called Max.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of How'd You Like That Movie? Not only are we talking about Mad Max 2, the 1981 film, The Road Warrior, but we have an amazing guest in director, writer, producer from here in Canada, actually here from Southern Ontario, Gabriel or Gabe Carrer. Did I get that last name right? I feel like you just told me it and I probably fucked it up, so.
You got it.
Amazing. So first off, we've been trying to lock you down for a bit. Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming out.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
So if you're okay with it, we're gonna jump right into our section that we like to call shameless self promotion. So yeah, Scott, do you wanna kind of guide this? Work with him.
Oh, it's self-promotion, so I don't know what I'm going to be saying. Figuring, well, I'm a father of three. I co-host this podcast, if that's what you're looking for. It's more Gabe. This is more Gabe's time.
Gabe. So, let's do biopic style. Like, what are you working on? And then we'll go back, where you're Dewey Cox and you got the hand on the building and you're like, you got to think about your whole life before you do a podcast.
Yeah, no, just one of those filmmakers from the Tri-City area, I guess you could say, Guelph, Kitchener, Cambridge, little nook, and never went to film school, just started making movies in our backyard here in Guelph with Chad Archibald, who owns Black Fawn Films. We made I think we were like 21 when we made this movie called Desperate Souls. It was like shot on the Panasonic DVX 100s. It was like the first digital camera to shoot on 24p. And we did a bunch of weddings to save up to buy two of these cameras. And we just hired our friends and, Ryan Barrett. It was his first role in a film, it was our first time directing. And from that, it was that movie, ironically, just launched us, not because the movie was good. The movie was extremely bad and awful, but because video stores were desperate for content. So like Blockbusters, Rogers, they were still opening up in like 2001, 2003, 2004. Like they were still opening up. I remember when they were opening up a Blockbuster in Guelph when we were filming that film. And we knew someone who knew someone who knew someone who knew someone, basically, who knew the owner of Alliance Atlantis. And they picked up the film and got it in all the video stores, Canada and the States, Lionsgate in the States, and then Canada, Alliance Atlantis. And then the trailer was on the first Saw DVD, the movie Saw. The trailer for Desperate Souls is on the uncut edition of Saw. And since then, it was just move forward. We thought we were on all Heidi Mai of the world, and we went and did another movie called Kill, and it was awful. And because we had some money from the first one, and we didn't listen to anybody, thinking that, we know what to do. So our egos were shattered very earlier on in our careers before anything.
So
And,
what was the advice you didn't listen to? Because I think this is everybody's got the stuff that they did listen to, but very few people want to really disclose the stuff they didn't listen to, which is often way more important. So what were you told to do that you chose not to do?
Like, I think it was rushed. So we went and rushed the script for Kill. The script was fun. Like, it's a fun script, but the sales agents at the time were like, hey, like, when you have a new project, it was more of like, let's bring you guys up a level instead of you guys staying at the Desperate Souls level. And what we did with Kill, we didn't move forward. We just made another low budget, crappy horror movie on our own dime. Meanwhile, we could have worked with a script on, with a company, with a group of people that would be telling us what to do, but we didn't really like that at the time. So we just went and made another Desperate Souls, but it was called Kill, and it was plagued with errors. Like, we filmed the whole film, but then the hard drive, we edited it. I forget what the problem was, and something happened to the hard drive, and then years later we recovered it and redid it, and then no one wanted it. Like, it was, by the time we got the film done, it was we hit a weird wave with making films. And with the digital cinema and with video stores, and by that time they weren't looking for crappy B movies, like low budget. Like, I'm not even talking B movies. I'm talking like gutter sewer trash movies. And we spent too much money on it, so we basically gave it to Trauma Entertainment, Lloyd Kaufman. We sent it to him, and we didn't see a dime. They just took it, and that was the ego shatter. So when people, yeah.
But you did recover. You did recover.
We did recover. It's out there. It's called Kill. They spelled Chad's last name wrong on the cover. It's Chad Archibald with a V. So it's just a testament to the film itself.
Non-union East European reasonable facsimile of Chad Archibald.
Right. But the movie's fun, man. Like, I feel like when looking back, like, it's crazy. We made like these paper mache tiki masks in our basement, Chad and I, because we were inspired by House of a Thousand Corpses, I think, when it came out. And I think there was a guy in that movie that had like this large mask. We're like, what if there was a bunch of those guys in a house, and these people were trapped in the house, but it was a game show, and like it was all Hawaiian tiki themed. It was so stupid. Like, it was like,
I mean, I'll be honest, it sounds kind of cool. Like, I kind of want to check this thing out now. You've sold it.
No.
But you guys did get back on track.
We did get back on track after that. Ryan and I were pretty tight, and Chad went and made Never Lost, and Ryan Barrett and I made a movie called If a Tree Falls. And I think If a Tree Falls was kind of like the film that helped me as a filmmaker break into a genre, like my exposure to genre film festivals and cinema. You know what I mean? I was in my mid-20s, so being exposed to that stuff. I mean, there was no Facebook. I don't think there was Facebook at the time. YouTube was just coming out, because I know when we made Kill and Desperate Souls, there was no YouTube, and we had to figure out a way to make a trailer that would fit on GeoCities. I don't know if you guys remember GeoCities. It was like a website creation online, and we had to compress the trailer so small because we couldn't afford the money. So our trailer was like super small on like the window. But If a Tree Falls was the one that propelled us pretty quick. And I mean, that was like a big band of brothers. I mean, Reese was in that film as the main villain at the end. Ryan was in it. Like, Chad helped produce it. Like,
wait. Reese Evanescen was a villain?
He's the main guy at the end who takes the nylon mask at the end. He's the only nylon head. We call him nylon heads that has dialogue. So at the end of the film, this was like 2009. He takes the nylon mask off and speaks to the woman. I don't want to spoil anything, but he's the main, like, the leader villain at the end. Pretty crazy. But that film got into Fantasia Film Festival for all the genre heads out there, and that really helped. That really helped us kind of like make connections, and that whole social networking stuff that I hate. That film, and then after that, we kind of just all went our own way, but we were all friends still. It was it was a good time. And then in The House of Flies, I was a big punk rock fan, and Henry Rollins was in Toronto, and I was like, man, like, my buddy Angus McCullen, he wrote the script for it, actually, it was his old film school script. I was like, dude, let's just go shoot this movie. And reading the script, I was like, man, Henry Rollins, like the voice would be great for that because I know he does voice acting. So I went to one of his shows and stalked him after his show like a little weird kid.
Wait. So you went to his concert?
I went to a Henry Rollins concert, yeah, in 2010, right after If a Tree Falls, because we filmed in the House of Flies in 2011, 2012. So after the show, I was the creep outside the venue, outside his tour bus, and I was like, hey, Henry, like, great show, shaking his hand. I was like, I'm making a movie, and like, blah, 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 like, you know, I'd like for you to be the bad guy in it. And he's like, just email me, man. And I'm like, huh? He's like, on my website, just email me. My email's on there. I'm like, oh, okay. I was expecting like either a big no or like, I'm like, oh, that's it?
Like call my people.
Yeah, or agent and stuff. So I got home that night and spent a week coming up with this freaking email, just like, Henry Rollins, like, you know, but like not trying to be fanboy, just trying to be cool.
Like I'm a serious filmmaker. And
yeah, like I did say my movie's in Fantasia. I was like, just newbie stuff that you're just like, oh God, like if I read that email now, I'd just be like, even though it was only like 13 years ago, it's just like, ah. Oh. And he responded and he attached his assistant Heidi May on it. And I told him the budget. I can tell you guys the budget now. It's years later. It was only $12,000 budget. And I told him, and he told me his rate. And I was like, that's it? So literally, I can't really remember, but like 4 months later, me and Chad, Archibald and Angus flew down to LA, got in the recording studio with Henry Rollins for 2 days, and pumped out all his kidnapper dialogue. It was awesome. And then we got all the dialogue before we filmed in the House of Flies. So when we came back, we also got a bunch of stuff signed for the crew for the film before we started shooting. It was a big morale booster too. We came back with all this, like, we had the In the House of Flies script created, and then he signed all the scripts. So all the crew members got like a signed script by Henry Rollins. And then it was like, yeah, then we just went and shot the film, and we had his dialogue on set already recorded. So it was cool for the actors to hear it and really get into it instead of doing it after. Yeah, that was that. And then after that, I don't even,
did you stay in touch? Like, did you become like BFFs or like?
No, but he would remember us. Like after the film was done, we went to another concert of his, and Ryan Barrett brought the DVD with him with the cover and stuff. And they got behind the scenes photos of Henry and him holding the cover and stuff. And we gave Henry a copy. And after that, I noticed Henry was starting to do a lot more genre indie films, which was cool, like in Toronto. So I don't know if we triggered it, but no, it was awesome. It was man, we shot that movie on the Canon T2i for all the gearheads. It was a DSLR camera, the Canon T2i.
It's beautiful.
Because at the time, red cams and all the big cameras were either too expensive and no one really rented them, and we couldn't afford it. So we just shot it on a little. Claudio Manni was our DOP, phenomenal DOP. He's doing big stuff now. Yeah, and then after that was the Demolisher. That was a shit show.
So our show is in Cambridge. You shot some of that here in the city, did you not?
We shot, yeah, actually, the Demolisher was shot in Cambridge, Kitchener. I always get confused with Kitchener and Cambridge, like the whole.
Of course you do.
Where's the border?
The only people who don't are people who live in Cambridge. We know where our city ends.
You guys have a border?
Yeah, it's armed. We've got armed guards there now.
I feel like if it was like, if it like the end of the world, Kitchener and Cambridge would like put a border up between the two, you know? It's like,
You shall not pass!
it's like,
So I think Cambridge officially ends at Sports World Drive. Like that's the line.
Okay.
Right? Like that
all
road
right.
itself, I think, is the dividing line. And then if you carry, people are like, when I'm listening to a film podcast, these guys are talking about geography of Southern Ontario. But like, you're in Guelph. I know, definitely know. You're from Guelph.
There's a defined border between us and you guys in Guelph.
That's
But
right.
yeah, Demolisher, we filmed that everywhere. One of the couple of producers on it, Dwayne and Andrew, they lived in downtown Kitchener, not Cambridge. And then there was a big we filmed some of the street stuff in Cambridge. Then there was a really cool tattoo place with all these like neon lights on the outside. It's in Kitchener. I forget what it's called. But we were like, man, that's an awesome backdrop. And we shot the Demolisher with no permits.
So it's
But
all guerrilla. The whole thing's guerrilla.
Well, kind of. Like the cops in Guelph, like when I call, they kind of know me from all the other shoots I've called them about. So even for the sake of Vicious, when we were shooting the motorcycle stuff, I called the cops, and the guy, they had to double check for a second, but I got no permits to shoot the Crimea Street, all the motorcycle stuff. On Crimea Street was nuts, but no permits for that. I guess it's an element of trust.
I mean, both you and James Cameron did the same stuff, and he did all right. So
right. But no, Demolisher was fun. That was a crazy movie. It was big. It was fun. It was an awkward time because it was like during a season of like end of spring where it wasn't snowing, so we lucked out filming in downtowns when it was desolate. Usually at that time of the year, it's either there's lots of snow. So and then after that, it was just Death on Scenic Drive, and then For the Sake of Vicious, and then a few other new ones coming up.
So before we get into your new stuff, so For the Sake of Vicious is the one I'm most familiar with, mostly also because we had Mr. Twister himself, Rhys Evanshan, on our show. He's actually going to be coming back on with Anel, who was formerly with Raven Banner, do our Oscar show.
Nice.
So you co-directed, and he did some of the writing on that, or like what was the breakdown of the workflow for that? Because he said it was a bit of a wild shoot itself.
It was a horrible shoot. There was barely any money. So I had a story idea of like, I love the movie Trigger Effect with Elizabeth Shue. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that movie. It was in the 90s.
Scott's a big Elizabeth Shue fan, so
it's all about the shoe.
So there was a big blackout and stuff, and I was like, man, it'd be cool to do like a home invasion film during a blackout. So originally it was like supposed to take place in the summer, and it was like, instead of like guys with masks on at Halloween, it was a SWAT team. So it was like more like less horror and more like
more action
afternoon or something around a house. But then I was like, man, like I wanted to shoot it that summer, but then it was like not going to happen because it was just taking too long to get off the ground. So I called Rhys up and I was like, hey man, do you want to take a stab at this? I'm kind of stuck at this. I don't know if it's going to work.
So did you just have an outline, like, or did you have a screenplay?
I always have like 10-page outlines with all the beats and stuff, like things. And then Rhys took the outline, wrote the script. It was pretty much where it is now because it was in the fall, and I was like, and then we were talking to some producers in Toronto, and then we knew the budget was so low that the only way to do
Can you tell us the budget? I always love hearing what these low budgets are.
I don't know. Am I allowed to say it? I guess I don't know.
I don't know. You're allowed to, it's our show. You can say whatever you want on our show. But I don't know if you're
budget. I think the budget after like marketing and all that other little weird stuff, I think it may have been like, I know the shooting budget was under 90,000, or just under 100, under 90.
Because it looks like, I mean, I'm sure you look at it and find your own flaws, but it looks very good. Like the Alex Tong's cinematography on this is fantastic. So I cannot believe that you guys squeezed a film like that out of 90K.
Yeah. I wish. Yeah, it was intense. I'm starting to have like memories. It was just the only way that movie would get made is if you had two directors who could do multiple things on set, because we had no money. We didn't have a production designer. Our costume designer was like everybody who get their hands on stuff. I know Erin, Rhys's wife, helped with some of the costumes, like Laura Burke's clothes, but like all the biker costumes, their helmets, I did all. Like I painted. My dad owns an auto body shop. The vests they were wearing, the patches on the back, I did myself. Printed them at Twisted Tees, sewed those on the back of their jackets that I got at Army Surplus Store. And then even on set, like as two directors, it was like, and not having like a huge crew, you were always doing something other than directing. And that's where it was a complete freaking nightmare. I've never had that in my life. Like even helping the lighting team. Like I remember on set where I would look at Rhys and be like, dude, I got to go outside and build this set. Because we had this party, so we had this scene that they were talking outside. in the backyard, and it was just all black in the background. And I'm like, and in the script it says that the neighbors were having like a Halloween party, and I'm like, okay, let's not cheap out on this. Like, let's do this right. Like, let's make this world seem a little bit more fleshed out and not like just a black background and then like audio noise. And that's my biggest peeve with movies. So I remember one day I had to, while they were shooting inside, I was outside building fences with a drill by myself. And I was having to time it with their takes of rolling audio. So
Like,
here I am outside in the fall, drilling and making, and then I was going and getting bushes with a hacksaw at the back of the property with bushes and shrubs. And this is stuff that freaking Abby doesn't even know, and other people on set, because there was no one out there watching me do this. So by the time night came, we had I basically made a fake backyard with a fence going all the way down with shrubs on the outside and a fake fence. And then we put crew on the other side of the fence to look like it was a party next door. But really the fence was in the backyard of we were shooting, you know what I mean? So it was just all through perspective. And I put like little lights and stuff on the fence, like outdoor lights to make it look, and it worked. Like when you watch the movie and you see the thing next door, it's like, but I mean, you barely notice it. No one in the audience is gonna watch you go, oh, but like I would, you know what I mean? And that was the biggest thing where like, if I'm watching my own film, I want to make sure that everything in it was to the best of my ability, you know what I mean? So that was an example where having two directors on set was needed, because
But the director's not supposed to be doing art, like literal art direction.
there was no money. There was literally no money. There was no money in this film that we had to actually, Reese and I, for the 2 weekends before, we would go on Facebook Marketplace with my Jeep and we would look up free stuff. Like the furniture in the movie, a lot of that was free, because we would go and pick it up in Cambridge. Some of the stuff we got from the Restore, the Habitat Humanity store, but some stuff, like, I mean, we went to people's houses and they would put it out for us and we would take it, and it was free. Like, we didn't have money for, you know, the motorcycle helmets. I didn't even put on the production budget. The motorcycle costumes, I don't know if I kept my receipts for that. There was a lot of stuff that Reese and I just scrubbed into our own pocket that no one knows about, right? So, oh man, that was
Where was your location? Like, was that a set, an internal set, or were you shooting in a house?
It was an actual house that was going to get demolished. It was on, I think it was on Eagle Street. And now when you drive down that street, they tore it down like 2 years later after we shot, or a year and a half later, and they put up two houses on the property. So it was a pretty big lot that this old house sat on. So it's kind of cool that, like, you see the street in the movie in this house that was on Eagle Street in Cambridge, and we have a nice exterior of this old house, but now it's not there anymore. And you have these two new kind of modern looking townhouses things there or something.
So I know that when I've talked to Christopher Giroux from Vortex Media, I don't know if it was this film or another film, but he has done that same thing back in the day, where you somehow get a house that's going to be demolished. They say, yeah, go in. And then you just like cut door frames out and put in your doorway dollies and stuff. Was that on this film, or is he most likely talking about a different film?
That could be a different film. I know for this film, I had to really drill it into our camera, like Alex and I forget who the grip guy was, Alistair. I don't know if Alistair was at the time, because we had another grip guy that left, and then Alistair came. But like, I know there was like, I don't know, like in the living room there, we had a full on, like I told them, I said, guys, like for these action sequences, we need a 360-degree camera movement, or at least like a 180 at least, right? So let's just top light it and worry about our fill lights for certain push-ins or whatever we need to do. So I remember leaving and coming back, and I just don't think people grasp, like, we can do anything to this house. So I came back and there was like, you know, a cord taped all against the wall. And I'm like, guys, like the camera and then the actors, and they're going to see this cord. I'm like, just destroy the ceiling, put a cord through the ceiling to the outlet, like upstairs, and then you don't have a cord like on the wall, you know what I mean, where the camera could see, you know what I mean? So they were like, oh, and I ran to Home Depot that second, got a drill with I forget what it's called, came back, went upstairs and just started hacking the floor upstairs. And then people were worried about I was going to hit a wire or something like that. And then I found out later that that's impossible for those houses anyways. So I drilled right through the hole, ripped it up, we stuck the cord. And so I think people had a hard time thinking like, yeah, we can destroy this house. Like, just go nuts.
Yeah, it's not like a normal location where
No,
the house
it's
has to be
not.
back to normal. It's like,
Oh, in a normal
cut the thing apart.
location, yeah, a normal location, you're like, oh no, is that a little scuff? Like, you're being so paranoid, and this is the exact opposite. So when you're trained to think otherwise, you know, it was nuts. We actually shot a music video there, like 2 months after the shoot for a band, and we just had them have axes, and we had them axing the walls in the music video. We had a camera on the side of the wall, and they were like throwing the fridge, old props down, and it looked like a house. Like, we were just like, man, like, we have a house, like, shoot a music video in it. Let's go. Let's just destroy it.
And this is one thing that I think your production design on For the Sake of Vicious, and as I said, the cinematography, one of the things I really stood out for me in this was the action sequences, and like knowing kind of the behind the scenes aspect of this is kind of cool because it worked. Like, everything you're talking about ended up working when you see this film. And I recommend people watch it, even just for the claustrophobic fight scenes, like in the bathrooms and stuff.
That was
like
all our stunt guys. Like, we gave them the sets, and they would have like half a day to plan it out. Like TJ Kennedy, like, there's just so many. There was a group of them. I have them all on Instagram. I follow them. I love those guys. And they just, like, we would basically leave set, Reese and I, and they would coordinate something and then show Reese and I, we'd make our tweaks. But it was all them. All the fight stuff was, it was all them. And then that's why the camera doesn't seem planned in these rooms, because the camera wasn't planned. The camera was just another person during these fight scenes looking around, because we didn't have time to plan, like, you know, okay, like, let's do this and this, and then we'll push in here. Like, yeah, there was a little bit of that, but it was the stunt coordinators who directed the action scenes in this film. So the film was a huge conglomerate of people, just all hands in. You know what I mean? I don't think it would have worked with one director doing it at all. I think it would have had to be a longer shoot if that had to happen, right? So you have your action days spread out a little bit more, because we would have to nail out one action sequence in like a day and then move on to the next day. So that's another reason why it was, you know,
Is
crazy.
that is The Sake of Vicious kind of your biggest film to date, or
No,
like the
I
most
would say
successful?
the Demolisher. I would say the Demolisher and For the Sake of Vicious. Sometimes saying that, For the Sake of Vicious. I'd say the two of them are pretty tie and tie. They were both around the same. I know I had more crew on the Demolisher, so there's a lot more of me able to like direct. This was like, you know, it felt like I was making If a Tree Falls Again, where you're operating the camera and then the boomsticks and the mic. Like, it was all hands on deck thing. And I know Reese and I divided up our like directing responsibilities on set. So he was directing more of the actors, and I was directing more of the camera department. So that was another thing too. And, you know, we didn't have a lot of, I feel like we needed more help in the camera department than what we had. So it was like more heavy weight on there. And then plus that with all the, everything else that needed to get done. Like, I mean, it would be in the middle of the shoot, and, you know, we'd have to get, there's glasses in the film where Laura Burke chucks, and we just never had time to get prop glasses, and we couldn't use plastic cups. So I forget what I used, but I remember going to get plastic chandelier or champagne glasses and then breaking them and then gluing them together. I don't know. It was just, oh man, it was just nuts.
So do you think there's would you co-direct a film again? If you already have, I'm sorry. And what's the secret to co-directing? Because I think that the directing a film, it's always good to have someone who says yes and no. Like, there has to eventually be a stop where the decision can get made. What is the secret to co-directing, and would you do it again if you haven't already?
I mean, I've co-directed stuff before. It's just, this was way more hands-on, where I don't think, I don't know, like, it was just, it's starting to turn into a blur. Like, I would co-direct again, depending on the project. And the key, like, I remember Reese and I, the summer before we shot, we would just spend hours storyboarding, and that was the thing. We needed to make sure him and I were both on the same page with like the scene action, the sequences, the storyboards. So we had a good rough like a good, like, okay, we're on the same level here. When we get to set, there's going to be some creative things, but at least there's a level that we can fall back on and just kind of like, okay, we both agree on this level, shot wise or sequence wise, or, you know, set piece wise. But no, and also dividing up the responsibilities too. Like I can't remember him and I talking that much together on set, because we were just so busy doing everything else. It almost felt like we would just jump into battle and then like
Reese is over here doing hair and makup, and
like, hey man,
you're gaffing
okay.
and
yeah. I think there's a few times where, you know, I was like, we both were behind the monitor watching. That was a rare circumstance where we were both behind the monitor together watching it, right? Because we're always just taking care of something else.
You have a couple features coming up. One's called what, Yander, and then you have another one as well coming up, maybe 2025, or
yeah, there's one called Yander. I guess the first time saying the name. It's been developed for like 6 months. It's going to be awesome. It's like a little bit of like a monster movie. I don't even know what you'd call it, a monster movie. It's like anyone who's a fan of like hardcore RPG games. I wouldn't say Dungeons and Dragons, but like just like really brutish, dark stuff is gonna love it. Kind of like home invasion meets Dungeons and Dragons / RPG, but in real life, kind of like being obsessed with something and how it might not be good. Because I remember when Dungeons and Dragons came out in the 80s, there was a whole satanic panic stuff. So it kind of dives onto, there was a movie with Tom Hanks actually called Tom Hanks did, I forget what it was called, but it was kind of like the obsession over something and how your mind can get consumed with something.
isn't it like Sorcerers and Serpents or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's a great film, by the way.
Oh,
Actually,
it is good.
film.
It's dark. So it's like, I wouldn't say it's kind of like that, but you know, these movies could be a pairing in a sense. And then the other one is a straight up monster movie we're filming up in the forest. We're just trying to make the timeline correct with this because we want to shoot in the fall, but Yander might probably shoot late summer, fall, and bugs are really bad up in the forest in the fall. So we might just make it end into a winter monster movie in the forest with a bunch of hunters. And I can't really say too much about it, but it's it'll be awesome to jump back into the hardcore horror zone again. Because for the sake of it was like it was horror, but it was like an actiony, like there was like guns and like motorcycles, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's very grindhouse, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. So it's like kind of like a huge mental mash of recent sensibilities, you know, coming together.
Great. That movie's actually from 1982. It's called Mazes and Monsters.
That's what it's called. Yep. I don't know if it ever had a proper Blu-ray release or anything. I don't know if it, because no one really talks about that film, eh?
I remember seeing that film. I probably saw it actually on cable, is what I probably saw.
I'm not gonna lie, I thought you guys were talking about Joe versus the volcano. Oh, because the whole thing, like he was convinced he was gonna die, right? They convinced him, and he was like, that's why he was getting ready to sacrifice himself. So I'm like, all right.
So for those who are listening, For the Sake of Vicious, you can find on Amazon and Apple. If you want to check out the Reese on our show, Mr. Twister, you can check out our Twister episode. You got In the House of Flies is available on Tubi. That's the one with Henry Rollins, The Demolisher, Tubi, and Apple. And obviously, we will look forward to Yander and your other upcoming film when it drops. Is there anything else you want to talk to before we get to the main event?
No, let's get into the Road Warrior.
All right, well, here we go. Scott, now you take over.
Oh, I got like 2 lines before we kick it back.
Hey, it's sort of like Mad Max, man. Like he had like 13 lines in the whole movie or something like that. So
that's why I get paid the big bucks, right? Yeah. But yeah, so Road Warrior pretty much it's a Mad Max film. It's pretty much, you know, you're finding gas, going from one place and then just going back to where you started. That's most of the Mad Max films.
Pointing out the obvious, that's why Scott is here to bring that heavy content. So thanks for that,
well, the one thing, like watching this again, I've watched this so many times.
Yeah.
But I'm surprised that it's not ingrained more or like more homages like with modern. Like the only one that comes to my head is This Is the End with like And at the end, when you see Danny McBride and all of them with Channing Tatum, they've pretty much just become like these guys with their hot leather and stuff. So, but yeah, like it's a decent film. It's easily, but also the other thing is, like, when people are discussing like best directors and stuff, like, you never hear George Miller. And just watching fucking Fury Word and stuff like that, you're like, being able to do all this practical shit and like you're never in the conversation kind of thing, right? Like it's always the same like 3 or 4 guys that are always in the conversation. He's never in it.
Because I win.
This is bullshit. All right, take it easy, man. Every time's different cards, he still wins.
I know it baffles me that George Miller, I mean, exactly. It's, I feel like he's a legendary director and people know he is, but I just think exactly what you said. Like, Fury Road, it got a lot of praise when it came out. Obviously, it was a big film. It still is a big film. In fact, I put it on. We were shooting out west in the Rockies, Matt Ninnabar's new movie, A Knight's War, and we put on Fury Road, and we were just all like, it was almost like a reminder, like, man, like, no one will go and make a movie like that. It almost like raised the bar, and you forget that it raised the bar. Fury Road did. I know we're supposed to talk about the Road Warrior, but
no, you can talk about any Mad Max stuff.
Yeah, yeah. George Miller as a director, it's like that movie took years to make. It almost felt like, I don't want to. Okay, I'm gonna get slandered for saying this, but like, or not slandered, but just bashed. It almost felt like a new age version of Apocalypse Now, where no one's gonna go make Apocalypse Now. That's impossible to redo. That's why that movie's incredible. Fury Road, to me personally, feels like it has that vibe. Like, you can't just go out and shoot Fury Road again. Like the scale of it and the practicality and how long it took them in those climates. And when you watch The Road Warrior and watch Fury Road, I rewatched it this week. You could see so many things that George's eye on The Road Warrior and then George's eye in Fury Road. You see parallels with like just the way the car was shot, some of the tumbles. Yeah.
Well, even the guys strapped to the cars, right? That started here.
Yeah.
With only 2 people, and then you go Fury Road, it's like 50 people strapped to cars, right?
Yeah. Even the chains, the element of using those chains, like when Max is chained, or when what's his name? Lux. This is Lux, the guy, the young guy in Fury Road with he kind of teams up with, you know what I mean? Like, he's chained and through the desert as they're walking, like all those use. I just love how he world builds everything with that. I'm curious to see how Furiosa, the movie, kind of like, if he follows like that same vein, and it looks like he does from the trailers. But and then the little hints, like I know in Fury Road, I don't know if you guys remember, but there's literally a shot of the gyrocopter skull. You guys remember seeing that?
Yeah,
with the gyrocopter guy from the Road Warrior. And then there's I think the biggest thing though, like Road Warrior was shot in chronological order. I found that out recently too. And I was like, that was shot in chronological order? Like, shooting the Road Warrior, I think I could be wrong, but the fact that they shot an action film in chronological order.
Yeah, and they had a stunt guy break a femur. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, so you're shooting in chronological order, which means anything that goes wrong, any cars that get destroyed, it's not like you're like, okay, now we're going to shoot all this stuff, now we're going to destroy the car. You're like blowing stuff up, jumping it off of things, crashing it into stuff. Like, even as old as this film is, the driving sequences are intense. I mean, Fury Road is like, when I watch, I think I described Fury Road as like needing to do crystal meth after to come down from the adrenaline high. Like, I came out of the theater and I was exhausted.
Yeah.
But yet I agree with you. You see the genesis of all of that definitely in Mad Max 2. I mean, the original Mad Max is an interesting film. I mean, definitely the original Mad Max actually was made for like roughly 400,000 American. It did $100 million in return.
Yeah.
That's insane.
It is.
And this one, just on the topics of budgets, like, I mean, he's been very successful. Like, This was made for 4.5 million Australian, so roughly 3 million at the US, and it did 36. So like obviously it didn't do the same return on investment, but like he's continuously had 4 or 5 times his budget return. So and that's just on Mad Max stuff. Like, you know, on the topic of the stuff that like when I started digging into George Miller's work, like
you're going with Happy Feet, aren't you?
Yeah, but the Witches of Eastwick, Lorenzo's Oil, like
yeah. That's the thing with George. It's like you would think, like, I mean, Ridley Scott. Like you look at all these big directors, and like Ridley Scott always direct. When a Ridley Scott film comes out, you know you're going to get something that's like Ridley Scott. But then you look at George Miller, you get Fury Road and The Road Warrior, and then like you said, you get Lorenzo's Oil and Babe and Happy Feet.
Yeah,
like,
and he won his Oscar for Happy Feet. He's got he himself has 6 Oscar nods, and he won it for Happy Feet. So.
He can do whatever he wants now.
You're goddamn right.
Yeah, well, like just based off that, because like me and Chris have talked about this kind of, but based off that comparison you're doing, like you look at Ridley Scott now, right? Like you got what, Napoleon?
Yeah.
What was the other one? House of Gucci.
What was that? The last duel.
The last duel. It's like he's releasing a movie technically at 80 years old or whatever he is. Like, God bless that man.
Yeah.
But you know, releasing a movie every year, right? But it seems like kind of what you were saying at the beginning, like with your advice, like taking your time, it seems like that's what George Miller is doing. Like he gestates, he sits on it, because like to me, I'm surprised that Furiosa is next for him and not Mad Max Wasteland, because
no, I'm kind of conflicted with that.
But I wonder if he actually wants the time for the script development.
But he's also almost 90 years old, right? Like to commit to doing like another like Mad Max where he doesn't want to do it doesn't seem like he wants to do very much CGI, right? That's going to take like a shit ton too, especially based off of it, right?
Yeah, the Furiosa thing, I remember when hearing that announced, because it's like a prelude to Charlize's character, and I'm like, okay, I'm into it, only because we haven't seen that side of the world yet, like from her perspective or for that character's perspective on how that world was built. But like I have this thing with preludes, it's like at the same time I know her arc, like I know where she ends up. You know what I mean? Like I always have this, it doesn't matter what movie it is, Star Wars, whatever, like they make these prequels and these things in between things. I'm like, okay, like I get it. Like, can we just like, what happens now? I want to see this go even further. And that's just a personal thing. So I'm just really like, okay, George, you know what I mean? Like, I'm in this. Let's see what happens. Like, but
no, I get exactly what you're saying. Because with these preludes, there is like in terms of any
threat.
Like you're not really worried about it. Because you're like, well, I know she makes it at the end of Fury Road, right? So
well, I don't know how she got her arm chopped off.
So so there you go. You're gonna see that, right? You're like, oh, she got her arm chopped off. But yeah, no, I get it. I get it.
And then there's I remember that for the wildest theory too. Did you guys hear about this random fan theory? Because I remember when Fury Road came out, you know, you're Googling online, it was the Max in Fury Road wasn't actually Mad Max. Did you hear about that theory? And it was actually the feral kid from the Road Warrior. And
I didn't hear that theory. I did hear the theory that Mad Max is not actually a real person. He's just it's a story that people in the post-apocalyptic world make up as like it's vengeance brought upon evil kind of thing.
Which is amazing.
Sorry.
No, I was saying that the feral kid thing got so huge that people started asking George in interviews. And I was reading the interviews online, and he doesn't deny it. He says, no, that wasn't my intention at all. You know, he said,
but if you want to do that, sure.
Yeah, he said it was really interesting. Like, oh, like, wow, I never thought of that perspective of like the kid just being so enamored with this character of Max taking on that. Because at the end of the Road Warrior, the kid goes and becomes the leader of the tribe, right? But like, that's the only thing where it's not the kid. But again, like, who knows, right? Like, and I was like, oh man, that would have been a cool thing. Like if it was actually, you know, the
intent
being
of
so enamored with someone, the man with no name, being so enamored with this figure that came into his life. You know, well, where's Max? Like it doesn't even matter.
I think it's funny that just on the topic of like kind of crossover. So Bruce Spence, who plays the gyro captain, but then he comes back in 3 as the pilot.
Thunderdome.
But it's like he's a similar character, but he's not actually the same character, but played by the same actor. You know what I mean?
Thought we wouldn't notice, but we did.
Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Absolutely.
Is that because I think because I also read a lot too, like where they weren't even going to make Thunderdome. George Miller wanted to make a Lord of the Flies movie for adults.
Oh my God, that would have been fucking awesome too.
And that's what Thunderdome was. And then it was like, well, let's just make this into another, like a third Mad Max. And that's what happened.
Well,
it was supposed to be an adult Lord of the Flies film. I forget where I saw that. It could be totally false, but I thought I could see that, right? Because
but there's nothing Lord of the Flies other than the actual Thunderdome, like 2 men enter, 1 man leave. There's nothing really Lord of the Flies about Thunderdome. They would have had to rejig that script pretty hard. I'm sure it doesn't have Tina Turner in it if it's just Lord of the Flies.
I was gonna say
he's fucking fantastic in that movie, man.
You wouldn't have that fucking soundtrack. You wouldn't need another hero if it wasn't fucking Mad Max, right?
The really cool thing about Thunderdome too was like big on the world building front, right? Like you got the first one, it shows like the world kind of in what happens, and you got the second one, and when you see this little gasoline thing, and then the third one, it shows like what the society is starting to really evolve into, right? Like you got Tina Turner's like master of this like new society that's coming up, and that's what I thought was interesting. That those 3 movies are a perfect pairing for like, you know, where is this world going? You're like going on this like crazy adventure. Like watching those 3 movies in a row or back to back is just such a treat, you know, for the first time even, because you're like seeing this like amazing, really like here is the progression of like the world, you know?
So where would you put Furiosa? Would Furiosa be, or sorry, not Furiosa, Fury Road? Do you think it's kind of in the same like time period as Thunderdome, like as far as like the world building?
Oh, I feel like that's way later on. In fact, those, you know, like this is the thing. I think George Miller doesn't think that. I don't think he. I feel like because there's all these fan theories, there's a lot of stuff in this film that lets you come up with your own stuff. Because if you look at Fury Road, you got the War Boys, right? The guys in the white makeup. You look at Thunderdome. You look at all those kids. At the end, I think they're in white. Are they in white?
Yeah. Now you've got me.
You know what I mean? So there's like, I feel like Fury Road's like after, and then like, because it's just way more people with the main guy, the bad guy, and then it's just like, I don't know, maybe something happened, like a society shift, and like, who knows? Maybe those boys in Thunderdome got lost, or maybe they became even bigger, and then someone came, and then like they evolved into something. I feel like Fury Road is even further, like let's say
because Thunderdome still has like a semblance to our like a society that we would know today. Where by the time you're in Fury Road, it's just like years and years and years and years. And again, especially if Mad Max itself, Max himself is not a real person, then he can transcend time, right? Like there can be a Mad Max for every generation kind of thing.
Yeah.
For me, if I was doing it, it would be Mad Max 1, then it would be Fury Road. Because when you go Road Warrior on, gasoline is the thing that they're worried about. Fury Road, they're not really worried about it. And in Road Warrior, they still have like oil tankers and refineries, right? Where later on it's the natural resources like water is that they're fighting for, right? That's why I like Road Warrior a lot, because to me it's more realistic in terms of like the whole apocalyptic thing, because they are scavengers. Like you see when that the car crash happens, like he's grabbing any kind of bowl to try to collect as much gas as he can, right?
I like that they don't have like basic things.
Changed my mind.
But they have nitrous oxide. You know, it's like can't get normal like unleaded gasoline, but I've got nitro and nitrous enough that I can not only use it, but I can somehow refill those canisters.
Yeah, right. That's why I think it's always earlier, because all that stuff at the beginning kind of the apocalypse is more in abundance, right? Where later on it's not.
See, I wonder if George would have that answer. I don't know if that answer's on the internet. Like, okay, George, where does Fury Road take place? Or did you design these films? Like, I know there's the thing that you're saying, The Man with No Name. It's the only thing that is like the costume of Max and Fury Road is literally exact same costume that Mel had. You know what I mean? So if it is The Man with No Name, there's a lot of details like the leather jacket, the pauldron, the leg brace. I think
Well, he still has his car too, doesn't he?
Did
In
Tom
Fury Road,
Hardy
does he
have a leg
open
brace
with
in
his
Fury
car,
Road?
his Interceptor?
Yeah, he opens with the car. Yeah,
Yeah,
because he's taking
so-
the piss, and then the thing that cut the snake or whatever, or the lizard. He
Yeah,
kills it.
so to be like, oh no, it's A Man with No Name for Fury Road and Order, I'm like, well, there's just it almost seems too much detail to be different. You know what I mean? Like I feel like it should be the same character, or is it just the same character to give the audience familiarity that this is Mad Max, but it's actually not.
Miller's like, I'm just making a fucking movie.
Right. Well, did you hear you didn't even have a script for the Road Warrior on set shooting?
No.
What, no
they-
script?
There was no script for the Road Warrior. So on the commentary, I listened to the commentary last week to get ready for the show. Was George Miller and the DOP. So I was listening to it, and like he had a script, but it was like non-existent. So he would storyboard the shots, but apparently they were very small.
Sort of
And
like your original trailer, very
Every
small.
day, because when you look at it, there's only like 8 lines of dialogue in the film for Mal, the main lead.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And what they say, like, and 2 of them are, I came for the gas.
For gas.
The gasoline.
Yeah.
I'm just here for the gasoline.
Yeah.
But, like, why would you need a full written? I mean, you could do scene action, but that's probably all what it was. And then you would just storyboard, because I know George is big on the storyboards, like drawing everything out, right? But apparently it was so cold there too that they would throw the storyboards. I'm just ripping this off the commentary I heard last week. They throw it into like these bins because it was so cold. So they were literally burning his storyboards on the day of shooting for fire for
Jesus, that in itself is like apocalyptic. Like,
Yeah,
you have
so
this
the
film
deal-
set with these like barrels of fire coming out.
to stay warm. And the DOP was like, yeah, I actually was like able to keep a few of the storyboards that, you know, like apparently like they're not that many in existence.
Do you storyboard still? Just on that topic?
All the time.
Like, do you
100%.
physically write them out, or do you get
I
someone?
physically draw them. Yeah. I know some people take photos and stuff and use whatever tech, but I sit there. I have like a big stack of was it like, you know, the websites we can order a paper from? Like I'll just get like, I'll design my own storyboard in Photoshop and then upload that and send it to Optimal Print or Vista Print, and they'll send me like a stack, like a nice big stack of it, and that's what I use.
Interesting.
Storyboards are so important because it's like you're shooting the movie in your head, you know, and it lets you go off a little bit on set if you need to as well, because then you can always like look back and go, okay, am I going too far off? Or, you know, because the script is words, right? But to me, a picture is worth 1,000 words. You know what I mean? So the script is important, yeah, but to me, I feel like storyboards are more important. That's just my opinion. Some people are completely against that. It's just, it doesn't matter.
Or yeah, some people will just
Whatever
have the
works
script
for
in
you.
a shot list, right? Like they work
Yeah,
with
a
the
script
DOP
is important. I'm not saying a script's not important. A script is 100% important. But I think storyboards are just undermined a bit, you know, and I feel like storyboards are just as important as a script.
Yeah, in terms of that, like kind of script and storyboards, like the one scene in this film, I know Chris was alluding it to, was the motorcycle accident. So the one where the motorcycle rider hits the car, flies off the bike, smashes his leg against the car, cartwheels through the air towards the camera.
That's in the film too, I believe. It's actually
Yeah.
Yeah. So they saw it. Like the stuntman was supposed to just fly over the car without hitting it. But yeah, it was an accident. He broke his legs, but they're like, this is so fucking good on film that I don't think most directors or anybody, production companies nowadays would be like, yeah, we're leaving the near fatal accident into the picture.
That's
right?
why I feel like we become wimps. But Australians are always known to be strong and tough anyways too. Like I've always had this like feeling that like Australians are just like way more tougher skin.
That's not a knife. That's a knife.
You know, like they're just like I don't know what it is.
Well,
It's
I
really
just think
surprising.
it's like filming in the 80s too, right? Like
Right? There was
because you
less-
had film and film was super expensive. Because even what was it called? The Twilight Zone movie, like where that helicopter crashes and kills the lead actor and the 2 kids.
right.
Like that's still in the movie. like you still see the like,
they're
just
like, we're not
"Fuck it."
gonna redo that, so we're just gonna use it in the film.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I think it was just like, film was so expensive. They're like, we ain't redoing this. This was good enough and even better than we thought.
As I was watching this film, I was like, I could only imagine how rad it would have been to see this in like a drive-in when it came out. You
Right.
got a couple like beers in the car or whatever, and you're just like sitting outside, and this massive screen and just the insane carnage. Like some of it, yeah, feels a bit kind of cheesy at this point, but seriously, like the actual car carnage in this is fantastic.
Oh, it's one of the best. In fact, so many films came out trying to copy that. There's a lot of Italian post-apocalyptic films that tried to copy that carnage, but it just never had the eye of George Miller, Like even as a kid, like I remember seeing Road Warrior. I mean, we've all probably seen it as a kid, but I remember seeing Road Warrior as like a kid with my dad. My dad let me all watch all sorts of crazy movies. And Road Warrior was always that one that was the Road Warrior 2, not the first one. The first one as a kid, when you're watching that, you're just like, okay, I'm going to go play with my Lego. Like there was just something about it that didn't keep your attention. But Road Warrior 2, like I remember like it was such a big part of like the act of play too. I don't know if you guys know what I mean. Like when, as a kid, like when you're playing, like okay, so give you an example. In the Road Warrior, there's like that mountain, right? And Mad Max is up there with the gyrocopter guy and the dog, and they're looking down, and you see like the gasoline compound.
Yeah.
And as a kid, I would just remember like feverishly every time I'm playing with my GI Joes. I had the GI Joe car. I forget what it was called, but it was like it had like these two guns on the top of the hood, and it looked like a Mad Max car. And I used my GI Joes, but I would get on my bed and use my bed and put all the pillows on top and reenact that Road Warrior scene. And then off the bed, down below on the floor was like the compound. So I'd have my two GI Joe guys, and the biggest mission was to like go and like infiltrate this large compound with whatever I built. And that's why, like,
And if you were Spielberg, you would have shot that as stop motion, and
Right?
we would
Exactly.
not be able to have you on our show right now because you would be one of the most famous directors in the history of cinema.
Well, this is the thing. Like, I don't know if there's movies like the Road Warrior. Like, I mean, I assume that movie was restricted. I just don't know if children these days, this is a super guess, but like are watching restricted movies, action films, and then like reenacting the play. And I just don't know if it's that's a lost generation thing with like people like us, who are, we're used to playing with toys and action figures and copying scenes from movies. I don't know if kids do that these days. I don't have kids, but I would be curious.
Yeah, my no, but also
You have kids.
now,
Well, you're the kid expert, Scott. Do
Yeah,
you
I was
think
gonna
your
say,
kids played with
my
toys
kid-
as a kid, or what?
well, they played with toys when they were kids, but they were never like reenacting this. And also, if they were reenacting this scene in Road Warrior, I'd be more more thing, because there is the subtle rape scene that happens during this as well. Right?
It's funny though. As a kid, it's like even just the killing of the dog. It's done so not I want to say tastefully, but they don't show the act. They cut away and they show the gyrocopter's face, and that's even more like, oh. But as a kid, I don't remember seeing ever cooking those dots up to that scene. Like I think I was just too little to. I think they just killed them and that was it. Like it was. I don't remember saying like, oh no.
I was hoping the dog was gonna get away because they managed to keep the dog alive, and like it's weird. All these other people killed. There's a rape, and then
the dog is killed.
Yeah.
I know, and that's another movie. The movie goes against the tropes with the dog. Like that sequence when Mad Max is against the rock and he's bleeding and they kill his dog. Like that's like the end of the movie. It's like depressing, and it's like against. Usually at the end of a hero arc movie or something, like the guy and the dog lives, but like no, they kill his dog. Like you're just like, man.
That's when he goes all John Wick on them. That's when he was like, I'm here not for just the gas.
Exactly, right.
Although after that happens, because they're like, we need you to drive the tanker. I'm like, when he comes back and they're like, yeah, fuck that dude. In my mind, I'm like, yeah, you also weren't even able to get the fuck out of here with your car. Obviously, you're not as good a driver as we thought you were. So how about go fuck yourself? But then spoiler alert, like the whole thing is a ruse. Yeah. That ending, like the first time you see that ending and understand it as an adult, you're like, what? Like mind blown.
Yeah.
The whole thing's a fucking setup.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to talk about on this film? We're almost we're just over an hour here.
Yep.
So
well, I was just gonna say, like, based on the notes that I read too, the villain, the humongous, or oh my
Lord
God.
Humongous.
Yeah, he was supposed to be originally
His partner?
his partner from part
First-
one. That's why
yeah.
they have the cop cars and everything like that. And he
Yeah.
has like the facial kind of burn stuff too,
Yeah.
which to be honest, I like that they didn't do that, right?
Yeah.
Kind of leave it open-ended where
Like a
it's
mystery.
just yeah.
Like,
When
who's
did-
this nuclear mutant man? Like,
Well, when did Friday the 13th come out? Fright Part 2, where actually it wouldn't even be Part 2. They actually, because if you think about it, he's Jason. He's got the bald head and the mask. But this movie comes out before Jason gets his mask in what,
And
3?
three.
Right?
part 3.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're basically
one.
ripping off fucking Mad Max.
True. Yeah. Unless it was an 80s thing, like with hockey masks.
Bald dudes in hockey masks and leather straps.
Well, I was gonna say yesterday I actually went. Part 3 came out in '82, so it would have been filming when this one came out.
Interesting.
But yeah, I went to the ROM yesterday with my kids. Get some culture and shit. But one of the exhibits they had was like the history of armor, and then it goes through the progression, and it goes to like nowadays where armor is hockey equipment. Where the shoulder pads is the shoulder pads of the knight and stuff like that. So I always thought it was interesting, kind of like because I never thought about it until I saw it like together. But with that, it would be kind of like, especially in the post-apocalyptic world, you just be grabbing whatever to fucking keep yourself protected.
Well, and especially in this film, it really shows the scarcity of firearms. Right. So mostly you are having to endure stuff like knives, blunt trauma, arrows. So the type of armor they're wearing is actually effective outside of firearms and literal fire. Like, you know what I mean?
You can move fast with it. I guess it's hot out there, but there's a lot of mobility in their armor and their costumes to move around quick, because I feel like, yeah, exactly. You don't have to worry about bullets penetrating, but more of arrows, and you need to be a little bit more agile. Especially
when you don't have any you're wearing chaps and your ass is hanging out. So very mobile, but you might be getting some sandburn up in the crotch.
Inconvenient if you need to pop and squat quick.
That scene when he rolls in with the dude on the back, you're just like, we have arrived.
Well, apparently there's a backstory George had for that, where it was on the commentary where that guy's not even his love interest. It's someone that guy rescued when that blonde guy was a kid. So it's almost like he's taking care of him. It's not a love thing. It's like a parental thing at all. A parental thing. Yeah,
I think it was just because they have the assless chaps, right?
Yeah, I thought it was just like their little. Yeah. Got to be more clear with that one, George.
Anyway, Gabe, thank you so much for coming to the show. I appreciate you taking the time to wait for us to get back to you and then adjust your schedule to meet with us and stuff. We are definitely going to throw a bunch of your stuff in our show notes. So if you want to check out Gabe's stuff, it will be hyperlinked in there. Is there anything you want to say before we let you go?
No, man. Awesome. Just thank you guys for taking the time talking about an awesome movie. And, you guys are local too. So it's just nice to put the face and video to the names of you guys. And I think who is the short film that's playing right now?
So I'm the producer of Passage. And then I've got stuff that I've directed, like a really art house kind of like Jim Jarmusch coffee and cigarettes thing that's in festival right now as well. So
what's that one called?
It's called Coffee.
Coffee. Okay.
And awesome. It was shot at Monogram, where I think some of your scenes for the Demolisher were shot in the basement, maybe the coffee shop in Cambridge.
We shot upstairs. I knew Dwayne Frey, who worked at Monogram.
I know Dwayne as well from that coffee shop. So.
Yeah, Dwayne's amazing. I love Dwayne.
Yeah, I think he just didn't he just do a feature as well that's dropping? He's living in Northern Ontario or something.
Yeah, he lives in Sudbury. So they just shot a feature called Violent Heart like a year and a half ago. So I think they're just in post with that now.
I mean, they're probably sucking up some of those nice Northern tax credits.
Right.
Anyway, Gabe, awesome. When your new films drop, definitely come back and we'll talk about those.
Yeah, man.
All right. Have yourself a great day.
Guys. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Ciao.
And that is our wrap for the day. Please like and subscribe to this podcast. Tell your friends. If you want to get a hold of us, reach us at the www.howdyoulikethatmovie.com.
talking about? The Road Warrior is one of my favorite. Why did I mention the Road Warrior? Like, I got stuff signed by George Miller in my poster room, and like all this weird stuff from the Oscars when Fury Road, because I knew someone at Warner Brothers, and they would just like give me.
So my quote is from James Brunelli from Real Views, and I think this really suiting. A straightforward action-adventure film filled to the brim with over-the-top chases and stunts, with a 93% from the critics and an 89% from the audience. Production by Rod Shaver, Vader Monkey Productions.